There are some things I'll take a chance on, but life is already enough of a gamble for me to put my whole nest egg in the share market. So I take a calmer path. By investing in private credit, I know my money could be growing, not yo-yoing.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hello, welcome to the COB. I'm Juliette Sarli. Great to have your company this Thursday afternoon. Let's have a quick look at where the local market is ending the day's trade. It has been a positive session. We've come off some of those earlier highs, but still finishing firmer by around 1/3%, and not too bad an outcome, especially given all the uncertainty still out there. But of course, we are monitoring this hopeful news as well, that we will hopefully see an end to the ongoing situation in the Middle East, of course, with this news that there may have been a ceasefire reached. Looking more broadly, a big rally coming through in mining stocks, very much lifting us today. So a 31% higher is where we finish. And it really has been about this metals momentum. So copper at a 16-month high, aluminium futures climbing to a 5-month high on supply concerns. Then, of course, it's all about rare earths. China tightening its rare earth export controls, expanding restrictions on processing technology, and barring some of these unauthorized overseas corporations. So spelling out its intent here to limit exports to overseas defense and semiconductor users. And GYG growth. I don't know how I'm going to say that, but I thought it was a funny title. Well done, Maurice. But of course, this was all on the back of what we saw with GYG shares hitting a 6-month high. We're obviously eating more burritos. GYG announcing strong sales growth for the start of full year 26, also buying back up to $100 million worth of shares and pushing ahead to expand its restaurant network. So 32 new stores planned for this financial year. We've already had 3 opened here in Australia, 1 in Singapore, 1 in Chicago. But Michael Toner from RBC saying that the first quarter update shows some comparable sales growth in Australia of 4%, which is actually below what he was looking for. Still a very good run for GYG today. Let's have a look at some of those copper players as we continue to monitor this 16-month high of the red metal. Sandfire Resources in particular looking pretty solid. We'll also have a quick look at some of those rare earths players, the likes of Lynas, I think, hitting something like a 14-year high there. So a really big rally coming through from Lynas. When you look at the banks, though, that was where we saw some weakness coming through, and CBA shares down by around 1%. So just limiting some of those gains that we could have seen otherwise on the local market. GYG, we mentioned, look, it has pulled back. I did mention at one point shares were up by about 26%. It looks like the profit takers have moved in. Maybe that note from RBC that they think that they've missed estimates, seeing some investors pull money there. But of course, you've got brokers still pretty positive on this stock. Elders shares, though, meanwhile, coming under a little bit of pressure today. The competition regulator won't oppose, though, its takeover of Delta Agribusiness. Lynas, I mentioned, well, that was a 14-year high, and it signed this deal with Novion Magnetics, a US manufacturer of rare earth magnets, and Brazilian rare earths also in focus. And we'll talk about that with Jimmy Jang in a little while. Liontown firmer by about 1%. Carmaker Ford, though, reducing some lithium buys. Also having a look at net wealth, its funds under administration reaching more than $120 billion at the end of September. Ryman Healthcare, that's an interesting one, very big in New Zealand, listed on the ASX last week. We spoke to the CEO when they listed. They did see a 9% increase in sales volume quarter on quarter. And of course, we just spoke to Playside in the 3 p.m. hour. Shares up by about 18%, all about this AI thematic extending its contract with Meta. Let's welcome to the COB Jimmy Jang from GBA Capital, and a lot to talk about. Maybe we'll kick it off with some of those rare earths players because, as I mentioned, Brazilian rare earths stand out. This is all about a strategic deal here, Jimmy.
Afternoon, Julie. Yeah, like you mentioned, I love the title that we're kicking off with the show, Rare Earth. Yeah, the big, obviously, catalyst that we're seeing from Brazilian rare earth that we saw today was the France Kerstetter coming into the deal. What's kind of significant in this is that it's a quite big step for the company. So the company obviously securing kind of this deal where the supply and the processing expertise for that heavy rare earth in Brazil. So it's a critical milestone for the company. And at the moment, rare earth are very critical for clean energy, defense supply chains. So strategic partnership like this one is a big kind of catalyst that the investors will welcome the most. And as you mentioned, we got that big straining coming from China as well. And in terms of the thematic, rare earth seems to be the really hot topic of the day in the ASX and also in America. And for the company, their Amagosa project is also gaining that good traction. So it has that massive resources of about 568 million tons at nearly 30% alumina, and with obviously gallium as a byproduct as well. So that's another kind of really good side note that we're seeing from the company. So it's a good longer term play, I think, from the company's perspective. The company plans to release that scoping study for the project by end of December, but their flagship remains as the Monte Alto Rare Earth project. So progressing from there could be a strong catalyst for the stock coming through of us heading into 2026.
All right, what do you think about GYG? I mean, obviously continuing its expansion. We've spoken to one of the co-CEOs, Stephen Marks, quite a few times. I mean, he's just adamant that our appetite, pardon the pun, for GYG is strong. They're obviously pushing ahead quite strongly with their expansion, but I did note that word of caution from RBC analyst Michael Toner.
Yeah, you're spot on there. Look, they obviously announced that up to about $100 million buyback, which obviously initially pushed the shares to that 6-month high. But as we saw, as you mentioned just then, by the close, it's now coming back. It's actually slowly below than what we started this morning. So, look, this kind of buyback obviously shows the investors, we really kind of welcome that kind of capital returning back into the company, which is good. But the stock already had that strong momentum, so the reaction was a bit muted towards the end, as we know. So look, it's still a vote of confidence in the business model. The expansion is obviously quite strong, and we've liked the name. We've been in this company since the IPO as well. But whether this is going to attract new investors when there's kind of new big thematics in the rare earth and the materials coming back, that's going to be a tough one in the short term. But longer term, I think this is a fantastic business that we can potentially hold on to.
All right. Well, of course, one that a lot of people are focusing very closely in on, and some pretty solid gains out there in terms of broker calls. Let's look more broadly in terms of AI as well, because this is still obviously a key driver of all the gains we're seeing globally.
Yeah, one of the main kind of key driver that we're seeing in the US index is the obviously technology and the AI thematic. So last night we saw Nvidia gaining 2.2% after the CEO highlighted that strong AI momentum and obviously rising demand for data centers and the cloud services. Now, the reason why this is so important is obviously the thematic that really drives the index at the moment is the AI. But majority of the commodities also on a rally at the moment is due to this type of demand for the AI as well. So it's very important that we keep a close eyes on these kind of big names move up, because that ultimately does have an impact to our small miners in Australia. And another thing to look for in the US at the moment, the treasury yields, the 10-year treasury yields slipped about 4% now. And that's largely because after the September FOMC meeting minutes was released, there was a couple of debates around that we should have been seeing a bigger rate cut than just the 25 basis points. So we potentially might see another rate cut happening this year before we finish off the year. But with that being said, I think the rate cut in the US is basically almost guaranteed now. We're going to see some aggressive rate cutting, is what the analyst has been projecting. And with the government obviously shutdown, we're not really too clear on the data, but we saw some of those private data coming out from ADP, for example, where those jobs being added has been so much more significantly low than what we anticipated. So the economy is definitely slowing down in the US for the wrong reasons, but at the same time, the Fed has to make that tough decision to potentially cut the rate, even though all the indexes and the commodity prices are all-time high pretty much. But just to kind of capture the economy to recover, we might have to see those rate cuts coming through. So that'll be very interesting to see how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, and I guess more broadly, and you talked about Brazilian rare earths, but all these copper players flying as well. Gold, as we know, continuing to fly. Is that where you still sort of see value here, or is the market looking a little bit stretched, in your view?
Oh, look, you're raising a really valid point there, Juliet. I think all the big miners, I think they're pretty much at a valuation that we're not too comfortable to put more money in. But, for example, I've been speaking about a company called St. George Mining on AusBiz a couple of times when it was trading around 3.8 cents. Currently sitting around 11.5, and it's on a trading halt today for capital raising at the moment. And, the company looks absolutely fantastic. So after trading halt's lifted, I really strongly encourage investors to keep an eye out on St. George Mining. The ticker code is SGQ. And also Trig Minerals, which is also in antimony, is also an in-house stock that we've been backing for a long time. So definitely in a smaller scale, so let's say in a small cap space, there's definitely a lot more room to grow, is our view. And also the demand for these type of commodities will only surge. And I think gold prices will be breaking about $4,500 US by end of this year, next year. So we've been strongly backing a couple of gold imminent production companies like Mika, and Gold Arc is another good kind of names to add. So yeah, really bullish on these commodity names.
All right, Jimmy, thanks as always. Have a great afternoon. Jimmy Jang there from GBA Capital. Well, today on the call, it was a US special. The stock of the day was iron, which is listed on the NASDAQ under the ticker code IREN. And Nadine spoke to the Marks, Mark Moreland from Value 3, Mark Gardner from NBC Markets.
Hybrid Bitcoin AI story, they're two pretty hot thematics, and I don't see them losing any business anytime soon. So it's like, you saw that chart, it's up, what, 300 or 400%.
I think it was 700% this year.
Or 700% this year.
So,
no, I was going to say in about the last month or so.
Yeah. So would you buy it?
That's another dollar cost average one. I quite like it. Some advice Claude Walker gave on the call years ago was like, buy a small amount so you keep track of it, and then add on weakness if you continue to like it.
I'd say it's a good speculative bet. For me, I would want to see them coming up with some deals with at least one, like a Microsoft or somebody where they commit to 10 years or something, or on a take or pay deal. And those deals are being done, by the way.
All right, let's have a quick look at the leaders of the day's show, and of course focusing very closely in on a lot of these materials players. Nickel Industries up 9%. Domino's pretty interesting, up 7%, maybe riding on Guzman Y Gomez's coattails there, although we noted that Guzman, despite being up by 25% at one point, has closed lower. Lynas there, a 14-year high, and of course Sandfire and Capstone on that copper rise. Let's have a look at the laggards today, and Austal was one stock coming under pressure, down by more than 8% today. Also saw weakness coming through from a few of these gold players that of course a lot of people are concerned have run a little bit too hard, too fast potentially. We also saw Ryman Healthcare, of course, we were focusing in on. NextDC News Corp as well, coming under a little bit of pressure. Right, let's have a look at the small end of town. Oh, Brisbane Broncos still riding on their win, up 28% today. European Lithium up 22%. To the downside, we have got weakness in Bindi, down by some 24%, and Tesoro Gold off by 7.2%. Tonight on Wall Street, Fed Chair Jay Powell gives a speech. So, of course, a little bit of focus on whether or not we get any more clues. Can we continue to get more clues there? But also, if we do come back online, which is unlikely, wholesale trade sales, wholesale inventories, jobless claims data scheduled. PepsiCo, Delta Airlines and Levi Strauss also coming through with earnings tonight. And tomorrow, Governor Michele Bullock will speak. I believe she's speaking to the Senate, and also we get a little bit of data with the monthly turnover indicator for August. But the local market has finished higher by about 1/3%, very much focusing on this metals momentum. Worth noting as well, Morningstar Lachlan Holloway, who we speak to quite a bit, saying the Australian market is modestly overvalued and looking a little bit stretched, but he thinks small caps and energy offer some value. All right, we will do it all again tomorrow from 9:45 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Thanks.
The COB is brought to you by Montgomery Investment Management. The world is volatile. Your financial future doesn't have to be. Find out more at montinvest.com.